Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to the library today. We are going to go over copyright law and how you can tell if what you are using is correct and, how to tell if you can even use it at all. So, the four things I want you to know today and consider as you go forward in not only this class but other classes is these four things: copyright, public domain, fair use, and Creative Commons. So, copyright is the exclusive legal right to print, publish, perform, film, record any material that the originator owns. So, for example, a screenwriter could sell his screenplay to a studio, and then that studio, with the authorization of the writer, can make a movie from it. So copyright extends to creative works, novels and movies and songs, things like that. But the biggest caveat is that it needs to be tangible. So, like the physical screenplay that Joe Schmo sells to the studio, right? However, just because you personally own a copy of a book or a movie does not mean that you own the copyright to that. You just own a copy of it. Copyright protections extend not only to literary works, but also to musical works, which are more the actual musical notation of a song or the sheet music, the arrangement of notes and beats. To sound recordings, which are the embodiment of those musical works. Dramatic works, stage plays, musicals, things like that. Motion pictures, architectural works, among others. And then the interesting thing about copyright is that it lasts a very long time. Copyright lasts the lifetime of the creator plus 70 years. So even if you find something that is very old, it's probably still copyrighted. Here's a list of things that cannot be copyrighted. For example, ideas, facts. If you research something and you discover some facts through looking at primary sources, then you could copyright the expression of those facts. So, say you write a biography or you write a history of X, Y, and Z. You could own the expression of those facts, but you do not own the facts themselves. So anybody else who came after and read your historical book, then that means that they could use your facts, but they would have to use their own words. Another thing that cannot be copyrighted are things like folklore or cliches. So, for example, like Romeo and Juliet, they're star-crossed lovers. So the idea of star-crossed lovers are people who come from totally different backgrounds who should not be together. That cannot be copyrighted. Another thing that can't be copyrighted is titles, colors, fonts, slogans. If you've ever seen the movie Star Trek, you know that they say "Beam me up, Scotty," and that cannot be copyrighted. That's a phrase, right? Another cool thing that can't be copyrighted is works made for hire. So if you're commissioned to make a pamphlet for the school or your job or whatever, then that cannot be copyrighted. However, you should get compensated for the work that you did, right? But you cannot claim copyright protections against it. Another thing that cannot be copyrighted are any works by the federal government. So pictures that they take, the White House photographer is not, and any of those are not copyrighted, things like that. Excuse me. So the big question is, can I use things in the public domain? The answer is yes, absolutely. Anyone, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you can use anything in the public domain without having to get permission. However, you cannot own anything in the public domain since it is owned technically by everybody. That's why it's called public. The only exception is, for example, if you take a collection of public domain works and present it as a collection, you can copyright the collection, but you cannot copyright the items in it. So, the third thing I want you to think about is fair use. So, fair use is the ability to use copyrighted material or work without permission, but only in certain ways and in specific conditions. So, to determine if something is fair use, I want you to ask yourself, is it fair and square? So, the 4 things you need to consider are purpose, nature, effect, and amount. So, something you're using is more likely to be fair use if the purpose of the new work is educational or is transformed into something different. The nature of the original work is nonfiction or based on fact rather than being creative or fictional itself. The effect of the new work does not include any negative impact to the creator or the value of the original work. And the amount used is only a small portion and does not include the heart of the work. So the last thing I kind of want you to think about is Creative Commons. So Creative Commons is similar to public domain in that anybody can use that material without having to get permission. However, there are licenses and public domain tools that you will have to use if you use anything in the Creative Commons. So you always have to attribute the work and you have to do it in a certain way. So if you're going to go to creativecommons.org, I highly recommend doing that. They have a lot of really good resources for you. And it's all free, completely free, but you do have to cite your sources in a specific way. So just make sure you're reading up on that. So Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that builds and maintains a globally accessible public commons of knowledge. They make it easier for people to share their creative and academic work, and for people to access and build upon the work of others. They provide licenses and public domain tools, like I spoke about. And then there is a global network that they support. You can also get a certificate to be, Creative Commons certified, which is really cool. And you can become experts in creating and engaging with open licensed works, which is really neat. So how do you take this new knowledge and apply it to copyright? Apply it to your own work. So the question is the original work in the public domain? If not, get permission to use it. Determine if your use of the work would be fair. So I need you to think about purpose, the purpose of the original work versus the new work, the nature of the work, the effect of the work not only on the original work, but how people might view the original creator. So that's really important to think about. And then also the amount that you are using of the original work. Some common examples of fair use, schoolwork and education. So your teacher probably has used film clips and videos from YouTube, things like that are considered fair use. Because, the biggest thing is you're not profiting off somebody else's work or creativity. Another example is when you're criticizing or commenting on something. So, for example, a book review. You can take pieces of the work, the book, you can take quotes and things like that and stick it in your review. As long as you are not trying to plagiarize, you're actually using it to make a point and comment on something. News reporting is also a really big one, where fair use usually comes into play. And then also comedy. Usually it is, if you ever seen Saturday Night Live, they often take things and spins on movies or popular culture, TV shows, things like that, and then make it funny, right? So they're poking fun at something, or they are making a satire of, you know, political events or current events, things like that. So that is what I want you to think about as you go forward. I want you to think about not only if something is copyrighted, but also if it's not, is it in the public domain? And then also I want you to think about fair use. How does that fit into everything? And then take a look at Creative Commons, and I think that you will be able to figure out a way to use something in a fair manner. And always cite your sources, because at least then you're showing that you did not get that from your own brain, but you used it from somewhere else. And that's it for today. Thank you.